all the security things, and now we're moving to performance. So I hope everyone can hear me well. Just if you can chat me that everything is good. And
Yes, all good, Camila.
fantastic. Thank you, Chrisanti, for confirming. And I'm going
How
to
about the
share
rest?
my screen.
Yeah.
So we start our last third day for the training. Okay. Sharing the screen. And here we are, managed performance. So today we're going to cover the advanced caching, cache tuning, performance tuning. We also touch the dynamic content optimization, which is Argo Smart Routing in combination with the tiered caching, which is actually my favorite part. I love it. And also we'll touch Cloudflare browser insights and analytics. That's quite important point because there is one analytic that I certainly want to share it also with you, where it's actually starting from, I think, April or June 2021, Google will be taking into consideration that 3 parameters in order to get the SEO and move the sites up on the top ranking just because of the how fast the pages are loading. So stay tuned to that point because that's something that is really important as well. Right. What you should know already today is like Cloudflare operates across all uh, Earth, and every single data center we put out there. We want to make sure we have the whole range, whole palette of the services running on each of them, including all the security features, all reliability, and as well performance. And we all provide a unified user interface from which one you can control all of it in one place. Cloudflare performance. So which parts are we looking at it? So the biggest part of it is, of course, part of the DNS, where if you're using our DNS, you also get the full benefits of our Cloudflare DNS security and performance, of course. On CDN and caching, this is where we're looking at the specific content rules that set either by us or by origin to serve the static content. On top of it, there is a load balancing that also helps to maintain the loads across the different origins. But this is something that we're not covering in that specific class, but it's there as well. And it can be as the DNS load balancer, TCP load balancer, or level 7 load balancer. So that's all also available in Cloudflare UI in combination with other services. There is a Argo smart routing. That's the one that intelligent dynamic content optimization that we're using as well. It's a cool technology, and we will tell you how it works and when it works, most important. And we also going to touch a web content optimization, but this is something that you should already know from ACE training and others, where basically we're using different image optimizations, mobile optimizations, code optimization, like minification of JavaScript, CSS, and HTML pages in order to reduce the size of the content by removing different things that is not needed. And of course, supporting the most recent web standards that you know with Cloudflare, we're pushing really hard. We're always trying to be on top of the game with the latest technologies to support so that our customers, whoever using us, they don't have to play that catch up game. And instead of focusing on their product, they will have to spend times on supporting the web standards. That's not how it works. We are good at it. We're doing it for you. So you're using us. You don't have to worry about it. All you need to take care of is focusing on developing your own product instead of spending time on supporting the web standards. And of course, access to China network. This is where we have a really lots of good stuff happening, that we have Baidu that we work with in cooperation in China mainland with 13 points of presence available there. Now we have a also agreement with JD Cloud, when in the next several years we're going to use 200 data centers across mainland China. So this is something that is really getting up to speed very, very, very well set. All right. So let's get into the advanced caching. Cacheability. So in Cloudflare, you have several settings, several features that help you optimize the caching. You can apply some of them, let's say, on a level of domain. That means whatever rules you set, it will be for the whole domain. But you also can play with it with page rules, as you're already familiar with it. So with cache, it's also the same way. So one of the settings that applied for the whole website, you can use it or in page rules, is development mode. Development mode, it helps you for some up to 3 hours temporarily disable Cloudflare cache and serve the content directly from origin. When do we need it? Basically, when we're building the websites, when we're changing the content of the websites, pages, we want to see the change right away. So we just turn on development mode without touching any other settings, because sometimes you have maybe up to 50, 30, 100 rules and you don't know which one to turn off, turn on. You just have that main button, development mode, served from the origin. You check it, you test it, you switch it off. File content, static file extension check. Is this a default caching extension? That will help you with that article that we have in Cloudflare support. So by default, this is the content that Cloudflare caches. Yeah. So basically, it's different images, formats. Yeah. There is also doc files like the one Microsoft Word or others that we support, and we cache them. In and here I want to so if you're dealing with some of the video content, MP3, MP4, it's not cached by default. However, in some of the regions, like for example, India, we do actually force caching MP3 and MP4. Interestingly enough, in India specifically, we have really quite a lot of media content used by mobile and desktop users. So it just makes sense for us to edit. But again, this is just an exception. It's not otherwise cached. And we always suggest you to, if you need to cache something like that, that is out of this list, make sure you have a page rules for it. Right. So what type of methods Cloudflare cache? We cache get, head, and put. So this is a request that we cache in by default, but you can always extend it and add post, for example, requests by using again page rules or even workers. Cache levels on the domain levels that you can set up is a no query string. So we just literally just only cache the image itself, but no queries. We also can do the ignore query string. So it's actually going to deliver the same resource to everyone. It doesn't matter what query string is there. And the standard where we actually respect the query, and we each of them will get the same, actually will get each time the content with its own query in it. So this is something like a standard recommended settings here. So when the request comes into Cloudflare Edge, so you can see that's the kind of check it's passing through. So if the development mode is on or not, is there is a request about get head or put? Is it a static extension? Is it the one that is a cache everything page rule deploy on it or not? So basically based on this, you can see if we consider it to caching or we will not be caching it. So, but basically it's all depends on the file static content and the rules that you're going to set it up. Yeah. So which content is certainly not cacheable? It's all the dynamic requests. What we consider as a dynamic request, those like different interactive forms, any request that goes to the databases, or maybe they set up for not to be cached on purpose. So all of these will just go directly to the origin and bypass Nginx cache. Those requests you can always find in the response headers, which is going to have CF cache status value dynamic. Previously, it was called unknown, but now it's all renamed. So you will see it's under dynamic. But if you're using older logs, you might see unknown that it's going to be dynamic. So possibly cacheable or static requests. So here is the cache key requested a set. If it's created and it's inserted previously in cache, or we're looking whether we actually store an object is determined during the response phase. So It's really depends how you set up again the rules. And we're going to look at it now closer with you, all the possibilities on that side. Okay, so what Cloudflare take into consideration when we cache in the asset? Or so you certainly want to look at the cache control header. You want to look at the header expirations. If there is any cookie set on the header, HTTP status code, is it 200, it is 400, 43, or 300. So this one also takes into consideration. And another thing is if you cache in some files, yeah, what is the maximum file size you can cache with Cloudflare? By default, free, pro, and business plans, they have a limit up to 512 megabytes for the single file. Yeah. But enterprise, they can go beyond that. They can have, let's say, media files or any file that they'd like to, 5 gigabytes, but it's still not the limit. We do have customers who contacted us, and based on that custom approval, we can increase that number as well. But you need to work with your CSM or SC in order to get requested to for the larger files like that. And query string per cache level setting. That's something that you already seen, that we can ignore it. We can do a standard where we respect that query string as well. So cache TTLs. Cache TTLs can be very, very powerful. And that's why you want to make sure you set it up also wisely. So TTL stands for time to leave content. And you have a TTL on the browser, you have a TTL on the edge. So you can set up the maximum age for the TTL so that when it's expired, it will certainly will get and get the update of the content if there is any changes or not. So that's why you want to make sure you are clear with that. And of course, Cloudflare Edge Cache, we respect the values when the object is deemed uncacheable. So we respect that values, yeah. So from that thing, you see the response header, cache control, public maximum age. What do you think? Is it cache control that's showing here? Is it served from origin or from Cloudflare cache settings? I guess it's very straightforward and you can guess it right away. And I will just give you a tip. So it's not anything that is set up in the response header. You can see it doesn't have anything to do with the Cloudflare right now because there is not a Cloudflare header. Yeah, usually Cloudflare headers, they have CF dash something. So certainly it had been set up, for example, by Origin. So make sure that you can always recognize the Cloudflare headers from the rest of the headers. All right, browser cache TTL settings. So this is the one that you can set up on a based on domain, or we call it zone. So you can decide for all of your domains the same browser cache TTL, or you can set it up in the page rules. And of course, those who use an enterprise parameters, they have much more different granularity in terms of setting up, like for example, up to less than 30 seconds. Other plans, they don't have that granularity. So, but be careful with it. Whenever you set it up, you want to make sure you set it up wisely, because if you get it at too long browser cache TTL, but your content is changing too often, so it's going to be mismatched and you're going to be serving an obsolete content. So that's why if you set it up wisely. Cookie. So that's very important thing. So if origin returns a set cookie response header, so by default, it means for us not to cache content. So you will see the status of the value of that cache is going to be miss. Yeah, but if it includes also some public or maximum age, like you've seen it right now, Cloudflare can cache it, the response, but strip the set cookie header. Yeah, so it really depends what you see and what you set up in Origin. Frankly, I've been seeing customers who have no idea what their Origin set up, or they're using some default settings, and sometimes they say, "Hey, why Cloudflare doesn't cache it?" I set all the rules in Cloudflare correctly and done, and indeed his Cloudflare set up correctly. But in Origin, it already says do not cache, for example, or sets the specific cookie that actually bypasses the cache, what we set it up. That's why it's so important that you understand how the web servers of the customer set up to make sure that we understand, do we respect the headers or do we cache it? What's the rule we should follow? And Cloudflare will follow it. So that's why it's so important to understand the web service and how the caching is set up on the service. So when we have a cache everything, it means that we will cache the full HTML content. That's very important. So for static pages, it's quite cool stuff that you can actually cache the full HTML content with combination of edge cache TTL. And usually we try to add in every page rules for caching a browser cache TTL, edge cache TTL, because it forced to cache the responses. And again, Cloudflare will strip the cookie before serving it to the other content. So this is, you don't have to worry about it. Right. Based on status code, this is something else you can see that based on the status code, it really depends what the time we're going to use it for it. So you can see 200, 206, 301 when we receive the things. We can wait for up to 120 milliseconds. At some points, again, if you need some, for example, longer time, this is something that needs to be discussed with our CSM or ASAs if we can set it up for you, but this is the default values that you can see here. We don't store 500 errors, but we do store 404s, which sometimes is a good thing to cache them. And again, like for some of the like basic DDoS attacks, it could be used quite well as well. Right. So this is some of the understandings when you see the cache controls headers in the developers code. When you see the network, you can understand what it actually means, but basically it's explained itself quite well. If it's public, it usually means that it's cacheable. Private, it's usually don't cache. If the maximum edge is like set to 0, it means that it won't cache. If no store, again, it's self-explaining, it's like no cache. Yeah, and the same with no cache, it explicitly says that it won't cache. So these things, when you see there, it's already means that like, hey, do not touch it, do not cache it at all. And we do respect that. All right, before I move to this, I want to go to the UI so that we get familiar where all that settings are. So if you remember, there is a caching tab that you have specifically for it. We're not going to touch analytics right now. We're going to get back to it later on. But basically, this is where you set it up your caching levels, and you see standard is usually by default. You can set up on the domain level browser cache TTL, and this is what we have here. You can see there is options like less than 30 seconds or respect existing setters. So if respect existing setters set up, so it means that we're going to respect that, and we will just follow the TTL from that origin, whatever is set it up. If it's less than 2 seconds, less than a second, wherever it is set up, we just respect that. How we will avoid it, how we will do it for specific pages, specific URLs, of course, with the page rules. So when we use the page rules, this is where we can decide. So one of the options is set up the browser cache TTL. Yeah, again, for that specific thing, you have an edge cache TTL that you'd like to work with exactly here. You can set it up to any that makes sense for you, or even up to, for example, several days, you can see, or months or year, depends on what the content you have there. Where we find cache level, this is what you want to play with. If you have a lot of static content and you want to cache whole HTML page, it's got to be cache everything. For some reason, you have admin page or login page and you don't want to cache it, you want to avoid the caching, then in this case, you select bypass cache. That's what you'd like to do. But with the caching content, that's what you do. You need to get cache everything. And of course, there are much more: cache by device type, cache on cookie, cache TTL by status code. That's all we're gonna look at it on the later on. Within that, I will stop sharing my script, and now, Krisanti, you can get to the second point.
All right, thank you very much, Camilla. So let's continue on the cache. So there are a few CF cache status, which is set by Cloudflare in the object that you are trying to cache. So first, before we talk about what are each of these means, how do you find or how do you know the cache? What is the CF cache status? So first of all, you can use a few tools in Cloudflare to do that, but let's use the most traditional one, which is using developer tools. So first of all, do you still remember how to access developer tools? So if you do not remember or you are not familiar, developer tools can be accessed if you are using Chrome, more tools, and then developer tools, or you can put Control-Shift-I. And then you can go to an object. So for example, I go to my demo page, orangecloud.cf. So orangecloud.cf is going through Cloudflare. It is orange clouded. So you can see each of the content being downloaded when you access this page. So if you go to one of here, you can see that this is the CF cache status. So in this case, the CF cache status is shown as dynamic. Dynamic means that there is no setting to cache this page, so it is not being cached and it is fetched directly from the origin. Let's take a look at JPEG. So JPEG is a content that automatically being downloaded or being cached by Cloudflare. So if you see, the cache status is a bit different. It's revalidated. So if you load the page for a few times, then the cache status will show as hit. You can also try this in your demo web page that you are using now with your Bootcamp account. So with that, you can go to the site with the demo web servers that I share with you, and then you can open developer tools, and then you make sure what is the status of this cache status. All right. Okay. So earlier you see there are different types of conditions. There are revalidated, there are dynamic, and there are, yes, the rest is revalidated. So actually there are a few options. So first, hit. So if the CF cache status shown as hit means that it is served from Cloudflare Edge. Miss means that it takes directly from the origin. For expired, it means that it was cached before, but the TTL has expired. So because of that, the request is served by the origin. So Cloudflare fetched the content through the origin because in cache status, it is marked in Cloudflare Edge, it is marked as expired. Stale, again, is similar like expired. It is already expired resource in the cache, but there is no further request for that. So the cache is just waiting to be deleted. But when the content is served as stale, means that Cloudflare serves a stale or outdated cache. Why? Perhaps because an origin connection error out, time out, or it cannot fetch the content from the origin. So the back-off plan is it takes the stale cache. Bypass means do not fetch anything in the cache, but fetch from the origin. So this one is only active when origin cache control is enabled in the page rule. So we will cover about origin cache control and the page rule later. Revalidated. So revalidated means that stale representation of the object is in the cache, but it was revalidated. Means that Cloudflare revalidate the content with the origin. Updating. Again, as what it says, it is currently updating or the process of updating the TTL into the updated one. So when we are talking about cache, we need to talk about page rule as well. Because page rule is a way how you can control whether a certain content is cached or not. So there was a good question earlier in Q&A. So the question is, can I cache the video content? So if your customer define a certain file should be cached, it can be cached and it can be modified by using page rules. So in the page rule is where you can define what type of extension or what type of files you want to cache. And page rules can only trigger when a certain certain actions that you configure in the page rule if a request matches one of the URL patterns you define. So take note that for the page rule, it has to match the URL that you define. So you might know that in Cloudflare DNS, there is a way to define whether a certain request is being proxied by Cloudflare or using Orange Cloud, as well as not proxied or using Gray Cloud. So the question here, can you apply a page rule to a non-proxied DNS record or URL? So for example, now you can see in the dashboard. So let's take a look at one of the configuration here in the DNS. So I assume you know the difference between Gray Cloud and Orange Cloud. So in Orange Cloud, it means that the request is being proxied by Cloudflare, while if it is non-Gray Cloud, means that you click this one, DNS only, so it is not being proxied by Cloudflare. Now the question is, assuming the content is like this, it is DNS only Gray Cloud configuration, and you apply a page rule to it, will it work? You can paste your comment in the chat. All right, anyone? Okay, we start to find some answer. No. Can I apply a page rule to a non-proxied DNS record? Yes. All good answers, all the correct answers. So you cannot apply the page rule if the DNS record is being Gray Clouded. Why? Because Cloudflare is not applying the security and performance feature in this record. Okay, so just take note on that. Next, so page rules are prioritized in a descending order in Cloudflare dashboard with highest priority rule at the top. So make the most specific rules on the top and then going more generic at the back. So only the highest priority matching page rule takes effect on the request. So if the page rule is 1, 2, 3, and 4, and once it hits rule number 3, then it will take effect, and then it will not cover the next rule. Now let's talk about the schema. How are you writing the page rule? So it's pretty simple. The format or the syntax is like this. Scheme, either HTTP or HTTPS. So take note that for page rules, it only applies to HTTP and HTTPS. It does not apply to, yesterday you learned about Spectrum. So Spectrum is using TCP and UDP, so you cannot use page rule with that. And then the host name will be the URL that you are trying to reach. So it can be like www.domain.com. Port number, so if there is a port number, so of course this will be the port number that is supported under standard Cloudflare supported port. And then path directory, if any. So if it is related, you can also put the path here. You can use asterisk to match certain patterns. There will be example later. Another options, you can also use a match wildcard using $X syntax. So later I will show you the example on how you do this block pattern. $1 first wildcard match, and then $2 is second wildcard match, and so on. So this is usually the $X will be useful with forwarding URL settings. So let's talk about examples. First example, wildcard.sgcloud.cf/direct and then wildcard. So this will match HTTP or HTTPS because you do not define any schema. So it can be HTTP or HTTPS, and then any A record, because A or CNAME record, by the way, because this one is wildcard star, so it can be any, and .sgcloud.cf, and then anything that is starting with direct. So it can be directory, it can be direct/url.jpg or something like that. It can also be a file, or it can be like this, directory / or image.jpg. Okay. Seems like there are questions. Let me pause here.
Yep, one of them actually was something that you more or less answered. It was about, can I apply page rule for non-standard port website?
Yes, so based on the schema, it is you can apply. However, make sure that it is on the port that is supported by Cloudflare. Or I think I've never tried this, but you can try if you are using Spectrum with HTTP. Remember that yesterday Camila shared about Spectrum, and she shared a few ports that you can, sorry, not ports, protocols. So one of it is HTTP and HTTPS. So if you define the port here, then you will be able to use. But if not TCP, UDP, you cannot use page rule.
Yeah, but page rule
All right.
up for the level 7.
Correct. Oh, yes, you are right. So as long as the Spectrum is using HTTPS, because HTTPS is layer 7, then you can do that. Those in the layer 4, TCP, UDP, you cannot use that.
Yeah, I just
okay.
added, yeah, just
yes.
quickly, just added to the chat, guys. I will send it to all attendees. That are the ports that by default Cloudflare support for HTTP and HTTPS. So basically, that's the one you can refer to in the page rules.
Yep.
And there is another
all
question.
All right. Yeah. So another question, are there limitations on how page rules are implemented? Let's say I have 30 web servers, and each web server has an average of 20 page rules. So it's about, what, 600 page rules, are you saying? Yeah, so the limitation of page rules is the number of page rules. So there are possibilities to add the numbers, but based on experience, do not add more than 125, because otherwise then it will impact the performance of the domain itself. So yeah, if there is a requirement for one web server to have an average of 20 page rules, perhaps we need to see, is there a way to make it more effective? Is there a way to, let's say for this 30 web server, is there a way to combine that into one page rule? Let's say using something like this, a wildcard or something that maybe, is there any patterns to the host name of the web server itself? Yeah, but it is not recommended to have 600 page rules per domain. Next one. Yes, Camila.
Just want to add that sometimes there is a redirect or multiple redirects, yeah, that you have maybe over thousands of them, and obviously page rules not going to be used here, but you should look at the workers. So sometimes maybe is your solution.
Correct. That is a good example of exchanging page roles with workers for a more efficient manner. Yeah. So another one is forwarding URL example with match pattern. So match pattern is the one that I shared with you earlier. So perhaps in your current URL, how your HTML is being formatted is like if you create sgcloud.cf and then slash image. Okay, sorry. I think the original one in your URL is this one, star.sgcloud.cf/star. So maybe in your URL you put images.sgcloud.cf/pic. And then if you apply these page rules, what it will do is it will change the format into let's say HTTPS or whatever it is, but it will start with hgcloud.cf and then slash the $1 is the first wildcard, which is images. So slash images slash number 2 pic1.jpg. So this one is something that you can also try out and test in the page rule in a way like this. So for example, you see this orange cloud. So orange cloud, you can see there is one image here that https orangecloud.cf/image/image8.jpg. So you can create the page rules. So for example, or let me see, if I do PPS web SSL. So you can also play with this. You can create in the demo website, in the gray cloud, you can create a page rule to say that, so this one, image.jpg, so image1.jpg. So images, gray cloud, images/image1. So what you can do in the page rule is if it is HTTPS, so I want to make sure that it connects to HTTPS, otherwise it will give me error. /star and then the destination URL will be HTTPS. So it is web/graycloud.cf/images/ what is this? Image1. Oh, sorry, I shouldn't say images. I should say $1/$2.jpg. So this is something that you can play with, whereby if you go to images, it will put it here, and then image1, it will put it here. Forwarding, it will cost forwarding. You cannot add any. Is there any forwarding before? Yeah. Oh, matches a target. Oh, this one. So it already has one here, so that is why I can't do that. Okay, perhaps we can try this in the lab later, but that is the concept of this matching pattern. Another one is using wildcard in the middle. So using wildcard in the middle, if you have any A record with $L pattern .sgcloud.cf, it will match that one. So it can be full, it can be, let's say, like follow dash URL, then it will apply to that. Last but not least, if you put something like this, then it will be all the files below the wildcard. It can be any dir and then anything below this. So I will skip this one, file that will not automatically cached by Cloudflare, because Camila has shared with you what are the files that is automatically cached in the documentation. So you can take a look and compare with this one. So cache level is the page rules. These are the settings that you need to set. Bypass, no query string, means that the cache is only cached without no query string. So means that if the content has the question mark after that, it will not included in the cache key. Or you need to ignore the query string. Standard means that just follow the standard of Cloudflare and cache everything. Cache everything usually is the one that we use whenever you want to make sure a certain content is being cached. So the best practice, I would recommend you to read the complete document here, but to customize the content to be cached, so first find or create a way to differentiate the static versus dynamic content by the URL. So this is something that you need to work with your customers. And then create a pattern, then apply a rule to that pattern. So based on the one that I share with you, the options, you can see which one applies most to your customer. And then remember to exclude any login or dynamic pages by setting bypass cache. So usually those that you want to cache is those with maybe a static or HTML, or those with the header query parameter static equals to true. Take note that even if you set cache everything page rule, it will still not be cached if the origin sends a cache control header with max age equals to 0, private no cache, or expired header with already expired date. So you need to include hcache-ttl setting when you set cache everything page rule to override the cache control header. And then when combined with the hcache-ttl more than 10, cache everything can remove cookies from origin web server response. So take note on this. This is actually the summary of the URL that I share in the link. So now, since you already know about how to create a page rule and what is the page rule syntax, how about analyzing the page rule that's being configured here? So I configured the page rule with star.domain.com/star. So this is an e-commerce web application. And then because e-commerce has a lot of pictures inside, a lot of library and contents, I want to make sure that I maximize the caching of Cloudflare. So I put cache level as cache everything in the browser as 4 hours, hcache-ttl as 1 day, because I know my e-commerce page is being updated once a day. So I would want the content to be cached full day. So question is there any risk if I apply the page rule like that for an e-commerce site? Please put in the chat. Okay. Yes, we already get a few answers, which is a good one. So the first one, some contents might not be updated when the browser still caches the content. Yes, you are right. So when I put this one, even if I update a certain content in my e-commerce site, it will still keep the content, let's say, after a day, only after a day, then it will be expired. And then another answer, you can update fast your content as all your content will be cached for a day. I do not quite understand what do you mean by update fast your content. But I think everyone understand correctly, whereby when I put the edge cache TTL for a day, it means that this whole website content will be cached for 24 hours in Cloudflare Cache. Now the question is, any risk if you are applying these rules to e-commerce websites? We have a good answer here. Some information might get exfiltrated from browser cookies. You are right. So from browser cookies, if you cache everything, then some can be taken, but usually that will be your session. But another good answer is actually one of our partners. All dynamic content will also be cached. So this is actually the real risk of running this command to the e-commerce site. So again, you need to customize the page rule with the web application that you are working on. A good question, a good answer, Adul Chai. So e-commerce usually will have a dynamic content, will usually have login profiles, payment profiles. So you cannot put very wide URL like this for that particular application, because then a login profile from one user will be cached, and then when a user will log in, it will be able to see user one shopping cart, or even if the credit card information is also there, then it will be cached as well. So the reason why I put this one, because this is a very, very common, and I see a lot of the team, a lot of people, they try to maximize the caching content by putting a wide page rules, but forgetting that there are dynamic content that should not be cached. Thank you very much for your response. Really appreciate the interactivity. So,
Krisanti, there is a good question,
yes.
And I got the answer. If you don't mind, I will read it and apply.
Oh, yes, please.
So there is a very good question about if I create an application using HTTPS proxy, but in Spectrum, yeah, can I create page rule to cache content of that application? The answer is yes. So that's an exception. When in Spectrum we create an application and it's actually on HTTPS, you can still add this application and page rules, and it will still go by this. And because it's HTTPS, it's not just pass through level 4, but also level 7. In this case, it means that page rules is going to be applied and WAF will be applied as well.
Yes. That is a very good question, and thank you for asking that, so that the rest of the partner can learn as well. So next, this will be a few examples, live examples from our customers on how they apply or how they use page rules. So the first one, example of a customer who use page rules to cache all their JSON files. So they put star JSON and then cache everything, edge cache TTL for 1 hour, and they turn on cache control on. So it means that it activates the origin cache control. So follows whatever cache control that is being set in origin. Because if you do not set this one, then Cloudflare page rules will apply the HTTL as well as the it will apply all the settings. Second one, so this one, they put everything below. They want to set the browser cache TTL for 8 hours, cache level, everything, cache everything, edge cache TTL for 20 hours, and then origin cache control on. And the third one, so this one is also another similar one, dash something. Browser cache TTL, they set for 8 hours, cache everything, edge cache TTL for 20 hours. So these are some of the settings that you can refer to. Another example, so this one is for live streaming workload. So for the live streaming workload, the important files is the index and the chunk video files. So usually the files is format extension is M3U8 and TS file. So usually when you are doing the live streaming, you still want to have a certain form of cache in Cloudflare, but it is not too long. So in this case, the setting is browse cache TTL 1 second, edge cache TTL 5 seconds. So this one is a real configuration from our from a customer for training purpose. So for TS, it's a longer one. I think this TS is the index file for the live streaming. So the browser cache TTL 1 minute, edge cache TTL is 1 minute. Okay. Let's see. Oops. Cache everything while ignoring the query string. So this is another best practice. So maximize the for caching a request even when it is served via a URL that contains varying query strings. So sometimes in the web application, it can get very, very complicated with the URL. So if you do not specify ignore query string, by default, Cloudflare will follow all the query strings, all the details of the URL. So but sometimes all these query strings are dynamic. So to avoid that, you can set ignore query string so that it will only see the main URL. Okay, so this is a list of caching related page rules. So these are options in the page rule that you can customize for cache. So what is the cache level? Either bypass, cache everything, treat all content as static, and cache all file types depending on what is your settings. Custom cache keys. So a lot of, in the example that I explained to you earlier, the cache keys are based on a very simple manner. If the URL matches this file, and then cache, that's about it. But sometimes for complex web applications, there are conditions where the web developer wants to put, if it matches a certain header, if it matches a certain, let's say, host, or when the country coming from where, then cache the content. So it is a more complex cache requirement. So with that is where the custom cache keys comes into the picture. So there will be a section later that we will explain about custom cache key. Also, cache by device type. So we have multiple device type, computer, tablet, laptop, iOS, Android. So this is to separate the cache content based on visitor device. Bypass cache on cookie. So skip the cache when a cookie matches a certain content. Or cache on cookie. So again, a condition on when to cache a certain content. Edge cache TTL, so this is where you control how long you want Cloudflare to cache. Origin cache control, so respect the origin cache headers as well as the edge cache headers. Respect strong e-text, so this one is a tag for the caching, so turn on or off byte for byte equivalence check. So moving on, there are also sometimes for complex web application, using page rule is not enough. So the web developer has multiple types of logic that you want to apply to be able to cache a content. Or perhaps it is a dynamically static content, which means that you want to cache content after the login page, for example. So it is not a very static content, but there is a dynamic content on top of it. So there are certain conditions. So this is where you would use a workers cache API. So the concept is the same as page rules, which means that you will have cache everything, cache TTL, cache key, cache TTL by status, but with additional capability of workers, you can create even more logic to the request. Another thing, this one, the dynamically static content, which means if you need to cache even the post request means that if it is writing something. So more complex caching requirements you can apply using workers and cache API. But in the event of conflicting settings, if your customer wants to use workers, at the same time you configure page rule for them, then the worker will take precedence. Moving on, cache flow summary diagram. So this is how the behavior of the cache. Inbound request. So when there is a request, it will check, does workers override cache TTL exist? If yes, then use the one from workers. If not, then it will ask, is the item is static, consider static. If the consider static, yes, so if there is any rule in page rule. If yes, then use the TTL from page rule. If not, then it will check, does cache control header exist? So cache control is being set by the origin. I will cover how all this plays into the picture in the next example. So if origin set a cache control yes, then it will check. Follow the as max HTTL or max HTTL from cache control header. Otherwise, then it will use a Cloudflare default based on status code. However, if the item is static, it is not, so it is defined as dynamic, then do not cache. So how does that place into the picture? So this is how the cache behavior works. Cache control. So cache control is set in the origin. So there are multiple ways of setting the cache control according to your web application. So you can put a cache control. So this one is three different options. Yeah. First, max age of 6,000 public means that I want to cache this as long as possible. So take note that max age, this number is in seconds. Or I want to put cache control, no cache, no store, means that the content is dynamic. Cache control, max age is 1, means 1 second. Private, no cache, no store. Private means, if I'm not mistaken, is browser do not cache. No cache, no store, and must revalidate with the origin. So if you see the cache control here, it shows that this is what's being set in the origin. So the age is 5 seconds. So this is how it is being set, but I think let me bring you to the server directly so you can take a look. So if you see, the SSH, this one, actually I am using Spectrum to connect to my my server. So I configure Spectrum to port 22 and then Edge to my origin port 22. So this is how it looks like when you use Spectrum for SSH. So this is my web server. So let's take a look at the configuration in here. Okay. Yep. So the one that you see in the screen is it clear from your side? Is it big enough? I think, yeah, should be big enough now. So in my web application, I mean, this is a very simple, by the way, this is a very simple web server. So I put that for all the files, JS, CSS, JPEG, at header cache control, max age is 30 seconds, public no transform. So it means that follow this 30 seconds if I do not set anything. So that is why you can see here that the max age is also 30 seconds. And then if you go to the curl, you take a look, it says, yes, CF cache status revalidated if you first log into it, and then the max age is 30. So now let's try to set a page rule, say that for all below image, cache origin cache control on. So with that, what it means is Cloudflare will follow this 30 seconds rules. The second one, now we want to override the settings from the origin by putting origin cache control to HTTL to a lower one. So with this, I would edit the page rule to say that for this particular image, cache TTL to change it to 5 seconds. So let's go back to the dashboard. I need to re-log in to another page. Yeah. Okay. So first of all, let's take a look at the content itself. So if we go to Orange Cloud /image5.jpg. So what is the, so currently the cache status is missed, and then cache control is 30 public no transform. So after a few load, then it will change to hit. Now, with the page rule, we are going to change the cache behavior from the origin. So by default, actually, if there is no origin cache control on, then Cloudflare will apply the settings in Cloudflare Edge. So unless you purposely set the origin cache control to be on, then Cloudflare will take a look at the cache age based on the origin setting, which is the 30 seconds. So for now, we activate this, whereby the origin orange cloud image 5 JPEG, cache level, cache everything, and edge cache TTL into 10 seconds. So with that, let's do a curl, because I think the curl is the easiest one to test if certain dev /now /dev/now https, let's say orangecloud.cf /images/image5.jpg. Okay, let's take a look. Is it the correct one? Or image/image5.jpg. Oh, so many. Let me change this to HTTP. So in here, you can see the CF cache status currently is missed. Now it's hit. You see the H is now 9. So because of the edge cache TTL is activated into 10, so Cloudflare will start to, now it is 21. Let's take a look again. 27. H30. Now become revalidate. Okay, this one is a bit inconsistent, but what we expect to see here actually is that when I access to this content, the age from 9, it will go down to, keep going down to 5, to 4, to 3, and then 0, and then when it hits 0, then it will revalidate and start again. So that is the expected behavior when you enable the page rules. Yeah, when you enable this page rules actually. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. So this is how it expects to look like. So after 10 seconds, the CF cache status changed to revalidated following the page rule, even though the max age is 30. So with this, I will hand over back to Camilla to talk about cache tuning.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Krisanti, for such a deep lab or presentation so that people understand what's happening. Awesome. So let's move forward. We're going on the cache tuning. So basically what maximum we can do with that things. So it's very important to understand how caching Cloudflare works. Yeah. So all the disks are encrypted. So that's number one. So for sure, all the content, whatever it's actually got written, it's always going to be encrypted. And all our hard drives are all of them SSDs. So 24/7, that's all like, that's how the Cloudflare, every single POP infrastructure runs. Very important to understand that Cloudflare, so from time to time, depends on the content popularity, will actually either evicted or not. What does it mean evicted? So if the content is very popular and being requested quite oftenly, that's the one that usually stays there the longer, the most, because that's the most common content that people require. But if there is some content which is the very rare when it's actually get to, so that's the content usually we, if we need to clean it up or do something, so it will basically remove that type of content, that the one that been really the lack one that been requested. There was a question from one of the partners a while ago, not on this training but others, where they asking, hey, can I buy a cache space on Cloudflare so that we never ever touch this content, even if that, for example, capacity gonna be already overloaded and everything, and if we still kind of like keep that cache space reserved under them. So not possible with Cloudflare, as with many other CDN providers there. This is something we don't offer. You cannot just buy a cache space, for example, and be 100% sure for like, I don't know, 5-10 years, it's still your content is going to be there. So just for your information. So all the content is stored on the disks with MD5 cache of their cache key. So that's what actually a standard approach. Each file contains the Nginx metadata, which is about 500 bytes. So, and of course, full response header and the body. That's the whole information we have. The metadata usually contains that type of information. This is the age, expiry, expiration date, the size, and if there is any cache tags, for example, if you need to purge it or do anything with it, there is also cache tags, and you will see later on, we're gonna get into it as well, into details where it's actually used. Right. When you use the page rules, there is a specific feature that we have there, and it's called custom cache keys. Before, it was actually available only on the edge side code. You had to send request to Cloudflare and ask us to set it up for you. But now we actually having it in page rules. This is something that you can decide. What for? Basically, somebody needs custom cache keys. Well, it needed if, for example, you need to have more variables to include or more parameters include to that caching rule than just a simple URL. You need to have a different behavior based on different header or set up a different cookie, for example, yeah? Or maybe look at the device type and country and language. So most common that I've been seeing, it was a different custom cache keys set up per country, per language, or per device. That's what I've been seeing quite commonly ask requests. And this is now you can do it with Cloudflare UI. So this is how the rule would look like, and this is what you can play with. So you see, you can play with the header origin, you have the schema, you have the host header, again, specifying the port and URI. And just bear in mind that we don't support the header with a very value in it. So that's the one is not supported. So what you can set up in custom cache key. So you can decide the different query strings. So if it's a standard cache level, if you ignore, if you exclude query strings, so arguments, that's all you can control it. As well as you can include different headers with different cookies, for example, response. And also if you'd like to have a include origin header or not, or maybe use original host or resolve host. So that's all can be easily adapted. It's extremely granular rule that allows you to do a really, let's say, get the most out of it, but at the same time get the most granular rules for your different customers, depends on where they are, which device they're using, what language they speak. So all those things, and you can now optimize it quite well. So before we get into purging the cache, let's dive into the UI, and that's where we're gonna find it. So I'm in the page rules, and that's where I'm gonna create the page rules. So we're following the same pattern, but what we have here is custom cache key. So as you can see, it's got quite a lot. You can decide how you'd like to do it, if there is a specific set parameters that you would like to do, or only these parameters, or ignore. On top of that, this is where you actually decide, would you like to get any of that features turned on for you or not. And of course, you can add extra settings if it's required. Anything else, like for example, um, uh, cache TTL by status code, or you need a cache TTL, so you still can add it together with it. So it can be as granular as possible, but I always advise to start with the simple one, play with it, test it, make sure that it gets what you needed, and continue forward. Never get like all 10 out of them and try to figure out what went wrong. So always one by one, especially when you're working with custom cache keys. It's so important to get the right values and right rule, because that's what something that can work for you or against you. Right. So on top of the custom cache keys, there is another very good feature that you might see. It's bypass cache on cookie. That's a great one. I personally like it, and it's quite good also for those who has a e-commerce type things. What basically it does, bypass cache on cookie. A great example: you running e-commerce website, selling some of the stuff that you have it there, and you want to maximize content being cached, but you don't want to cache it when somebody, for example, is about to check out or put something into the basket, and you don't want to touch that things. Yeah, you don't want to cache it, but you still want to improve the time before they actually do the payment process. In this case, the best example is that you can use bypass cache on cookie. And here it means that you can put the cookie, the one that actually set up by the payment gateway. Either you use Stripe, WooCommerce, or any other payment gateways that commonly used. All you need is just to provide, for example, their specific um, cookie value that they set it up, and based on it actually you can avoid caching once it sees that cookie. So basically it drop immediately, won't cache anymore once it sees the presence of that cookie. There is also a great article, you can have a look at it. It's called bypass cache on cookie for WordPress and WooCommerce, and this is an example exactly how it actually done. So this is really powerful element that only available in enterprise and business plans. That feature is not available for free and pro customers. And of course, you have cache by device type that also can help you, and cache on cookie. So basically, vice versa. If you see that cookie, start caching it. So, for example, and you can follow that advice. So you can see the variations are really different. So it really depends on your customer needs and their complexity. Right. So let's look now at the purging. Purging is very important component here, and timing and granularity of purging also plays a big role. We have a customers who has like thousands and thousands of pages. You can't just press button purge everything, because it takes everything out from the cache, and basically you have to start again. So that's why you want to make sure you have an options like a custom purging by URL. You can do it by host name, by tag, or by prefixes. So we will look at it, how it's actually done in the UI, and basically go over all that different features that are available here. So it's easier to show where it is. You're going to go to the caching. In this caching, in configuration, the first part is basically is purge the cache. So you have that purge everything. Sorry, it just kicked me out. I guess it's just the time that I've been logged in and hadn't logged in since. So I'm logging back. Right. So I'm going to my Cloudflare Analytics. That's the one, the main that I use, and to the caching directly. It's also very important. That's the biggest thing that Cloudflare offers, that once you purge the cache, it happens literally seconds to remove the cache from all our different data centers. Yeah. So again, it's just a matter of seconds. Right. And look, so that's the options you have. You have the URL that basically need to provide this URL like these examples here, and you're able to do that. You can do with custom cache key, as you can see. So that's the one that you can actually do in the page rules, and you can choose the device, for example, or choose the country, how you'd like to actually uh, purge based on cache keys. Yeah, so that's also available for you in the page rules. If you, for some reason, won't prefer to use the host name, you can also do it per host name. For example, you know that you have like a block CF-analytics, a new version of it coming. You need to update it with a new one, just specify that host name. And you can see it's also enterprise only, enterprise only, enterprise only, last three options. By tag, that's the tag that you see in metadata that we were talking about, that we save along with the file on Nginx. So basically, that's where you create your own tags for different content. For example, this is, I don't know, like electronics tag, or this is static content tag, or etc. So that when you decide to purge, you say, okay, I need now to purge only that specific content that has that specific tag. So if you put the tag here, then we'll look for it in the metadata. And if we find it, it's going to be purged basically right away. By prefix, this is another, which is kind of a very comfy way to do that. You can also do it by like this. So it's also depends on you how you'd like to do it. But you can see the limitation is you can do up to 30 prefixes at a time. So it's just for your information. Another thing which is very important, that you cannot purge the browser TTL. So that's something that you just set it up. You set it up in case if your content is changing more often than your browser cache TTL. So we suggest you to change browser cache TTL for a lower period in this case. Otherwise, because you don't have any other control how to purge it, how to do that. So that's why make sure that you do it wisely. Right. So that's on purging. We went through that details and how you can do that. That's just an example how you can do that purging basically. And now let's have a look at the analytics and couple of things that I want to go you over it. So there are a couple of things. I will start with the slides and after we dive into the UI, but basically you can be a little bit overwhelmed. Each product, each part in Cloudflare comes with actually analytics, which is fantastic, but sometimes it can be confusing. We want to make sure that you understand what is available in which part. We start with the tab analytics. This is where you can find the request information, bandwidth, unique visitor threads, status codes, basically go by country and everything. So that's all information will be there. But what type of information you see in the cached bandwidth or uncached bandwidth, cache request or uncached request? As you can see that total cache hits and revalidated responses, yeah? So that's the one that actually recorded as cached bandwidth. So if somebody asks you what actually cached bandwidth is, basically a set of the requests that got a response hit and response revalidated. So otherwise it's can be uncached, which is like unknown or dynamic content that actually goes into it. Uh, network analytics, that's a one that available on the network layer, and those who actually has a spectrum available or using magic transit, they basically using on the account level. It's not on the domain level, but it's on the account level. This is where you can see the top different vectors of the different attacks, whether it was like volumetric attacks, scene flat, you will see them all here. You will see from which IPs they come in, what's the destination IP port they've been using, the type of attack, the bandwidth type and requests that they've been actually coming on different ports. So that's pretty cool statistic that you can see there. And we're going to look with you together at it as well. And of course, there is a cache analytics that we're also going to go now with you to look at it. And this is where you can work on the information that actually been missed. If you see a big percentage of missed or none content, you can always filter based on it and understand what exactly has actually been missed and why it's missed. And if you see something that is like in common, just add it to the page rules in order to get it hit by a cache. So let's dive into it, and I will start with analytics. So I'm gonna increase the screen a little bit more so you're able to see. So in analytics, you can see that's where you see your old traffic. You can decide if you want to do it per requests or how you'd like to see it. Yeah. Again, this one is limited to up to 24 hours, I think, for the free pro, and business and enterprise, they say up to last 30 minutes. Basically, if you do some of the requests, you should be able to see it within probably less than 5 minutes already updated in that report. Cool stuff about it, you have a zoom in feature. So basically, if you zoom in, you can do that just with the mouse, and it will show you exactly specific moment which one you can actually zoom it into, which can show you exactly for that interval, so that you can actually now filter and look specifically for that time slot that you've been doing. Um, Now you have a security separately, you have a performance separately, DNS workers and logs. You also have a Argo separately, workers separately. All of these parts is going to be separately, but we go on the one that the most of them is self-explainable. So let me go back to account home and show you, for example, where you can find network analytics. So I'm going to go specifically for that EMEA lab. You can see once you on the account level, on the right side you have a also menu, and it's a account analytics, where basically this is something running in beta, where you can see the information across all your domains, not just domain by domain, but basically an overall total view of the traffic for all your domains. You have some other features that you have available, and also you have a network analytics. That's the one I wanted to show you. So this is where you're going to see the magic transit execution, what actually been, what the type of attacks been, from where they coming, what's the difference with the last period. So it's always show me that's the number is like what's happening now, and what's different was in the last 24 hours. So I can go again and deep dive into it based on ports, based on protocols, based on IPs and other solutions. So it's really cool stuff where you can see what's actually happening on the network layer, and you can dive into these attacks and understand what's been happening, from where they're coming, which top countries that been actually coming attacks from, and etc. So basically a pretty standard things, but it's actually kind of cool stuff if you want to look at it. Now, let's go to the one that really specifically directly affects the performance. Yeah, so I'm going to my Cloudflare Analytics. So I'm going to this account for that domain. And this is something that, guys, is really important for you, because this is what's going to change in the middle of 2021. So before we get into it, we'll look at the cache performance. This is where you find your cache performance. Again, you can play per country. If you have different, let's say, rules per country or per language, or anything you'd like to see it there, you can do it by device type, what's happening there, can understand what's been served, when, what is was actually missed, validated, or expired. Again, you can filter that information. You can go down to that content and have a look what actually is actually missing. That is it the dynamic content that actually should be, or it can be something get cached. So that's the one you have it here, but I want to show you the one that actually is under speed. So under speed, you also have the browser insights. So browser insights, that's the one that actually you should look up for specifically, because these core web vitals, this is something that actually is so important, because this is something that Google engine and probably other search engines gonna take into consideration in order to improve the ranking and SEO of different websites. So they're going to be looking at the top 3 components. And this page, this insight, been built together in cooperation with the Google team in order to help our customers to understand how are they doing on their SEO based on new Google ranking that they're going to introduce this year. So Google will be looking at 3 parameters: largest contentful paint. That's one of them, to see on which study it actually goes to. Is it needs improvement, it's a poor, or it's really good? So if it's really good, it pulls you up on the ranking. A second parameter that they will be looking and evaluating is first input delay. So they're also looking at it. Is it really something really slow? Is that it doesn't matter if the content is really relevant or not, but it will also help you to improve your SEO. And cumulative layout shift. That's 3 parts that actually Google will be looking at on the SEO. So that's why if you want to look how your site is doing, make sure you also pass through the core web vitals in order to get into good ranking for your customers. So this is another also good selling point for customers to make sure that they also can follow that information. Right, within that, I'm giving back to Krisanti so that she can continue with performance tuning.
Yes, thank you, Camila, and thank you for covering the browser insight. So it will make my portion lesser later. Yeah. So now let's move back to the performance tuning. But before that, I would like to cover the page rules that I mentioned earlier. So I take a look again into the page rule, and this is a mistake that I created. So if you see in the page rule, I put wildcard.orangecloud.cf. So the rules that will apply on the edge cache TTL of 10 seconds, it should be something before the orange cloud. It cannot be earlier in my testing. I just put directly orange cloud and then slash, I think it's somewhere earlier, whereby I put orange cloud directly. So with orange cloud directly, then I see an inconsistent of the cache, because sometimes it gets from the origin, sometimes it will get from the edge cache. But if I change it to www.orangecloud.cf image 5, which applies the page rules, then you will see quite consistent type of age, whereby it will always be below 10. Then the cache status will be hit, and then after that, age 8, it will not go beyond 10, because 10 is the one that the limit in the cache TTL. So after 10 seconds, it will expire, and then it will get revalidated. And if you would like to check on this as well to understand more, you can also do the same, as in you can run this code on your browser as well. Oh no, sorry, not in your browser, but in your online curl or in command line to take a look at the behavior of the cache. So what you expect is the one I set in the page rule should be the one that is active. This is just to give you a way on how you would test whether the HTTL that you set in Cloudflare page rule is active or it follows the origin when you are troubleshooting the performance. So this is also relates to performance tuning, whereby how to troubleshoot or to improve the performance when, let's say, you have a customer that is complaining there is an issue with their performance. So with this, I will share with you some of the tips and some of the methods that you can use to improve the customer performance. So if you join last week training for the ACE, you will know about how the caching works, how to check if Cloudflare is caching a content. We talk about the CF cache status, content optimization, and then more detail on the best practice. So now we are talking more details about the troubleshooting. So what are the common performance blockers that we often receive from our customer? So first is customer is using origin redirects instead of using page rule. So for example, they want to redirect from HTTP to HTTPS. So instead of using Cloudflare to do that, they actually configure that in their origin. So what is the difference? So this is how Cloudflare works when there is a request from the browser. So for example, you set the origin redirects in the server itself. So let's say from HTTP to HTTPS. So what it will do is from the browser, I put request to HTTP www.orangecloud.cf. So it will go to Cloudflare. There is no rules to say redirect here. So Cloudflare will forward the request to origin. In the origin, the web server say that, oh, if the request coming from HTTP, move that to HTTPS. So this response will go back to the browser. Then the browser will re-request again with HTTPS, orangecloud.cf. and then it will go through Cloudflare, and then it will go to origin, and then it will serve the content. However, if you use the origin redirect using page rule here, or you use the settings in the SSL, what happens is when the browser request comes HTTP orangecloud.cf, once Cloudflare sees that, Cloudflare will activate the configuration. If request coming from HTTP, redirect that to HTTPS, go back to the browser. Browser will resend the request, and then Cloudflare will then forward to the origin. So of course, it will be faster. Next one. Customer does not optimize or not cache everything that they could. So Camilla did share about cache analytics. So use cache analytics to take a look what are the type of content you do not cache, or maybe it keep revalidated. Cold cache. Cold cache means that you put the TTL too short, so while the content does not being updated too often, so that is why the cache being cold, and every time you need to fetch from the origin. Another possibility is too many external assets. So the most common in a complex web application, the web application itself has plugins and have integration with other websites. For example, Facebook, Google, or some other marketing related sites. So note that for Cloudflare point of view, in case you did not realize, Cloudflare only optimize the website that is or content that is related to the domain that is protected under Cloudflare. So for example, if my domain is orangecloud.cf, and then I have third-party content, this third-party content, the performance will be according to what the performance of the third party itself. We do not improve the performance of third-party domains. So that is also another reason why when you do a performance benchmarking, make sure that you exclude those third-party external assets. So we cannot optimize this unless there are JavaScript and Rocket Loader is enabled, because for Rocket Loader, if we detect that there is a JavaScript, we will pause that or put that at the back end. Another common performance blockers, too many JavaScript. So the recommendation, if possible, you can use Rocket Loader, but be careful if that particular web application requires that JavaScript in order for the whole page to be loaded. So check with your customer, is there any dependency on the sequence of loading in the JavaScript. Performance can be slow if you have too many image is not sized to display properly. There is no compression or optimization in the image itself. And then another common performance blockers that often overlooked is long time to first byte or wait times for initial page HTML. So note that HTML page is not automatically being cached by Cloudflare. And one of the reasons why, because some of the HTML can be dynamic. So it depends on the web application itself. If you have, you cannot by default cache all the HTML, because some of the HTML is dynamically generated HTML according to, let's say, your login profile, your users, or your maybe the locations. There is a geo-based, like if you are in Singapore, it will serve the Singapore, the localized web page. So need to discuss with your customer how to customize which page to be cached. So analyzing whether an overview dashboard is this good or bad. So let's say you have a customer after onboarding with Cloudflare for 1-2 weeks, and then you do a tuning session with them. So you see this type of statistics. So there are 2,000 over unique visitors, total request this one, percent cache only 13%, and then total data served, yeah, this one 350 meg, but the data cache is 48. So put in the chat, what do you think? Is this good or is this bad? Yeah, while you are, put your response in the chat. I would like to hear what you think for this dashboard, or at a glance. Do you think this is a good performance, or this is bad, or something to be improved? So while waiting for some of the responses, there is a question: what is the maximum JavaScript recommended if customers do not wish to use Rocket Loader? Actually, there is no limitation on how the maximum JavaScript recommended if customers do not wish to use, because Cloudflare never restricts based on the number of JavaScript. But of course, it will also depend. First of all, the JavaScript can be cached. So as much as possible, you need to make sure that first JavaScript is cached. Second, the number of JavaScript, depending on how customer wants to improve their JavaScript. Another option is also, is it possible instead of using the JavaScript that is running in the origin, can it be triggered through workers instead? So workers is Cloudflare serverless platform, whereby it allows the customer to create an event-driven JavaScript at our edge. So rather than having that being executed at your servers, then it executes at Cloudflare, which means that it is even faster to get the response from the visitor, because the response always being executed closest to the visitor or the browser. So let's take a look at some of the response here. So there are a few response. Bad, low cache rate. Another one needs to be improved because the percentage is too small. Another one needs to be improved, need to re-evaluate page caching, and caching 13.3 is too small. Yeah. Interesting answer. Thank you very much. So I would expect this type of answer. So for your information, this is a real dashboard from our customer. And our customer is running a mobile payment gateway. So they are using a lot of API traffic for the transaction, and this is how their traffic looks like. So is it good? Is it bad? So from our review and based on the customer response, actually they are okay with this. The reason why the percentage is 13%, because most of their traffic are payment traffic. So payment traffic should not be cached, and they do not want it to be cached. So that is why the percentage is 13%. So again, the answer is this good or bad? It depends. So it depends what is the web application that you are serving. A lot of dynamic traffic, so this kind of overview page is expected. A lot of, if it is expecting to be a static content more, then of course this is bad. Another one, for a media traffic, is this good or bad? So I believe all of you knows the answer by now. So this is also another real customer dashboard. Okay, so I believe you know the answer, right? Yeah. So I think this one, you also know the answer, right? Okay. So tips to improve the cache hit. So what you can do first, you can also cache a static dynamic content. Static dynamic content means is that it is a static content, but being served in a dynamic page. Like let's say you log into your usual online shopping website. Of course, a lot of content there are actually the same, but it's dynamic because there are login profiles being applied to that. So this is in terms of the asset itself, you can create a logic to cache this content, but make sure you do not cache the dynamic portion of it. Increase the cache TTL less so that you have less revalidated requests.
Krisanti, there is a good question for you in the chat. Do you want to read it?
Okay. Yes. All right. Can you please explain how revalidated requests affect the performance of a particular website, static or dynamic? Yes, this is a very good question. Just like what I experienced in here, actually. Actually, it's here. So, revalidated. What does revalidated mean? Revalidated means that Cloudflare detects this as a static content, but it keeps fetching back to it keeps revalidating back to the origin. So why it is revalidated? Because the cache already expired in Cloudflare Edge. That is why it goes and fetch back to the origin to check if the content is it still the same or it is being updated already. So how this affect the performance of particular website? It will definitely degrade the performance of the website because every time it does a revalidation, it actually refetch the content to origin. So of course we do not, if we know that the content is still valid, it's still not, it's still the same, we do not want to keep revalidating it because then it will add the bandwidth to the origin. We want Cloudflare to take care of all those static content without the need to touch the origin unless it is necessary. So the same, if you see a lot of revalidation here, what you need to do is for that particular content, you need to take a look and try to extend the TTL. Unless the customer say that, yes, it needs to be revalidated because I update my website every, let's say, 30 minutes, every 1 hour. Maybe I am running a news website that every time there is a breaking news. So this is, of course, valid that you need to revalidate. So again, the most common case, try to reduce revalidate unless the content change often. So revalidate is necessary. Hope that answered the question. Let's move on. Yeah, so this is actually the guide for you if you receive any complaint from the customer. Let's say, hey, I just used Cloudflare, but how come my performance low? So we need to have data in order for maybe for you to talk to the support. So what questions you should ask your customer? So you need to ask them. So you say your website after using Cloudflare is slow. How do you say that it is being slow? You cannot just say, I feel it is slow. Our support cannot accept that. We need some data. So the data based on, is it only a specific URL or the whole domain? Is it only related to a certain file? What is the file size? What is the type? So that you can take a look in the cache analytics as well. And then usually, how do you measure the slowness? So if the customer has a tool that they can share, typically it is related to time to first byte. So time to first byte is when the browser tries to connect to the website, and then the first byte that they receive from either Cloudflare or Origin is the time that the browser receives. Let's say it's maybe 1 second, 2 seconds, or more. Throughput. What is the cache hit ratio? So this is what you need to take a look in Cloudflare data dashboard. Is there any availability issue in the website? Web application performance. Are they talking about fault time speed index, or if the workload normally is video performance, is there any buffering happening? Time to first frame. So if it is a website, time to first byte. For video is time to first frame. So another one, what results did they see? So first, it will say it seems slow when loading to their laptop. So this is where this is most common answer from the customer. So try to go deeper into the numbers, how they see the performance. Run curl for 100 times from a VM. Some responses took more than 3 seconds. The more valid one is if the customer is using tools like Sedexis ranking. So Sedexis shows whether Cloudflare is worse than competitor if they compare the performance if they use multi-CDN. So they measure the performance using Sedexis as a tool. And then if the customer are using certain metrics, applications in benchmarking tools in their either Origin or cloud-based, like they are using New Relic or they are using some others, Pingdom or other things. Okay, what next? So first of all, of course, you need to measure or reproduce this result if you can. Also, you need to check if the customer, when they see it's low, have they excluded third-party sites? And then what is the customer target performance? Usually, if you are doing a POC with a customer and it is related to the performance, so these are some of the criteria that you want to take a look. The wait time is under 100 seconds, or we have the faster time to first frame or time to first byte to the competitor. So this one is not a good one. For example, the web page seems fast on customer laptop. So some of the benchmarking tools that you can use, the free one is webpagetest.org, GTmetric, or Pingdom. You can also use your browser for debugging, but actually this is not a good way for doing a benchmarking tool. One of the examples that I would like to share with you is by using Catchpoint. So Catchpoint is the tool that Cloudflare SE used to benchmark the performance whenever we want to compare, for example, during the POC, whether Cloudflare is faster or slower than the other one. So as you can see, this is my demo website. So what you will see, the most common parameters, web page response time, this is the total response time, and then you can see each and one of the parameters. So when is the render start, how fast is the DNS, how slow is the wait time. So if you see that the wait and response time is slow, so this is probably the contention either in the network or at the origin itself. And then bottleneck. So this is where you can see where is the bottleneck is. So you can see a lot of thing is actually at the load time and the wait time. So perhaps this is due to my server is not fast enough to respond. So the request, it has to wait for my server to respond before they get the content. Another thing you can take a look in the benchmarking is how many third-party websites is actually being loaded in the application. Because in most cases, I mean, some of the performance tuning that I did with our partner, we see that there are a lot of third-party websites that actually causing the website load to be slower. So just make sure that you only calculate or include those websites that is in the POC and exclude the one that is not. All right. So with this, let me hand over back to Camilla to talk about Argo Smart Routing.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Krisanti. So let me get into the slides and share them. Right. So Argo Smart Routing, this is something that is actually quite really exciting things. It's an approach that we do for dynamic content, basically something that cannot be cached. And you have enabled Argo Smart Routing, you should see some optimization, but there are always some caveats. So let me first explain what is it, how does it work? Argo Smart Routing, if somebody wants to have a simple explanation, it's usually which says, hey, if you know the mobile application that you have, a Google Maps or Waze that helps you to navigate across the streets of your town, uh, city, and avoid the main traffic. So that's exactly what Argo Smart Routing do, but with the data. As you might recall, in every single data center where we have our equipment, we want to make sure that we have a multiple alternative providers, transit providers, a backbone providers that we connected to. In case if one fails or got the jam, traffic jam, we are able actually to send the request over other provider. And this is the case for the dynamic content. What is happening is that from every single data center, we are checking what is the fastest route right now for from that point A to point B. And if the standard one is congested or clogged, the content will be sent over this alternative path. And believe it or not, but it's quite rather can be often where the standard channel could be the shortest distance, but the one that actually has the fastest reaction is not the shortest one, and it still actually delivers data quite fast. So this is what Argo Smart Routing is using. And it depends really on several factors. One of the factors is how much volume of traffic your customers use for this dynamic content. So Argo Smart Routing really works fantastically well for those who has a lot of volume of the content. If you have a really small site with a very small content in it, you won't see that much improvement. It will might still have it something, but let's say in a minimum one. Also, another factor is that Argo Smart Routing works the best is actually global traffic. When you have a really lot of customers coming from different parts of the world, this is when Argo Smart Routing shows its in beauty, showing how powerful it can be because it's optimizing it around the globe. But if you have a customer who has a small traffic, who has actually customers, visitors coming from that specific location, one or two countries, or only that country, of course, do not expect miracles here because it's already happening within that local things. Right, that's one thing that we have it. So this is an example how Argo Smart Routing works. That's maybe is the standard path that usually Cloudflare will use. Yeah, but you can see if it's actually congested going through that locations, it might just go and do other connections through other provider and it will be much faster and available. So that's an example how the connection actually works with Argo. There is another component that comes with Argo Smart Routing is the component called tiered caching. From now, you know, if you work with Cloudflare as a standard default CDN, every single data center will be caching the content. And if you don't have a cached content on this data center, all of these 200 data center will go to the origin and ask for that content. It's just a flat structure where it actually works. By turning on the tiered caching, it actually creates the hierarchy of the data centers. Some of the data centers will be master data centers or tier one, and the rest is going to be tier two. So how are we identifying which going to be master, which going to be tier two? So in each region, we are looking at the geography regions, for example, North America, Latin America, Europe, Asia, APAC, yeah, Oceania. All the things is considered as the regions. And in each of these regions, we will have the master pops. For example, in Australia, it's going to be Sydney. Maybe looking at the Japan, it's a Tokyo. Looking at the North America, it may be Los Angeles. In Latin America, it may be Sao Paulo, and etc., etc. So they are going to be the master pops, and the rest around them is going to be actually that tier two pops. So what's happening when somebody is coming and requesting that content? I'll give you an example where, for example, situated the origin is situated somewhere in US, yeah, running somewhere in Los Angeles, but the request coming from Chile, from Santiago. And what is happening here? Instead of go all the way to Los Angeles or wherever the origin is, that tier two pop will ask first for the tier one pop. Hey, do you have a cache for that website here? And it actually goes to much shorter direction to Sao Paulo, which is still within Latin America, very closely. And tier one will tell him, hey, yes, I have the cache. So here it is. So it basically saves a lot of time before going all the way to the origin to Los Angeles or Australia or any others. So basically, this local master pops acts like a main, like a source for them to check the cache for that tank. And most likely, if somebody else asks in that area, tier one already got it. So it's going to be much faster to get to the content is. So this is what called tiered caching. It comes with default topology where we already have in different these regions set up which is tier one, which is tier two. So you don't need to touch anything. But I've seen several customers who's got totally different requests and they'd like to have their own setup of tier one and tier two. It's possible with Cloudflare. You just need to provide us how would you like to do that, because there might have some exclusions or maybe exceptions where they have origins are and where they have traffic served from and visitors. So they might swap some of the tier one and tier twos. So this is really something that works, believe me, quite well for the, again, for global customers who has a global visitors with tiered caching combination with Argo Smart routing. So as you can see, basically it shows you like how they all asking for their tier two pops for that cache request instead of go all the way back to the origin. So they kind of asking it locally, which saves drastically time as well. This is in the Europe, another example, how it's actually asked. You can see where the master pops are located for that specific locations. Right. Let me show you also where you can find it in UI. So first of all, you need to go to the traffic. In the traffic, you should have enabled Argo. That's where enabled Argo. But on top of it, you will have a enabled tiered caching together with Argo. It will appear here, and it shows you what the optimization look like exactly. But if you want to see the full report on Argo Smart Routing, you need to go to Analytics, click on Performance. And this is where the first part of it is going to be Origin Performance Argo Smart Routing. So it looks brilliantly. And by the way, when you testing with your customers Argo Smart Routing that has lots of dynamic content, please give it at least 2 days, 3 days maximum, yeah, for Argo to optimize its routes, because sometimes 24 hours is not enough for Argo to get optimization of the content. Some people try it within 24 hours, they switch it off without even get the chance for Argo to optimize it. So my recommendation, keep it for 48, 36 or more hours to get it optimized before you want to evaluate, did it really work actually or not. So as you can see for this site, lindenposketracing.com, you can see with the time with Argo is like almost double less than when without Argo, which is fantastic. They got lots of requests, they've got lots of dynamic content, and you can see it's up to 45% improvement. Yeah, but also there is a tab where we can see in geography, and this is, it shows you exactly where it was the most improved time. You can look at Japan, it's coming with 46% better than if it would be without Argo Smart Routing. If we look at all that areas here, it certainly helps a lot to optimize it with a really high numbers. On top of your existing CDN caches, it still helps a lot to improve it with Argo Smart Routing. But again, it's not the case in every single region. It depends because he probably have less customers in that area, but majority of his customers are located in Europe, for example, and this part is really optimized quite well. But here maybe coming less customers or they asking different content that is maybe not that dynamic. So in this case, you will see less improvement. But again, it's not the case. Maybe in the next other 48 hours, it will change again. It really depends on the transit providers, what their current situation and how it's improved. But believe me, guys, it really works. But you needed to understand if they have really a lot of traffic, if they have really truly global appearance, and that's two factors really helps to improve the number even more. All right, within that, I'm stop sharing and giving the words to Krisanti. Krisanti, are you there? Are you on mute?
Hey, yes, sorry, I was talking while I forgot I was on mute. All right, so we come to the last part of our session, which is browser analytics. So Camila has covered most of what browser analytics is. So what I'm going to do now is to share with you how do you see when browser analytics, browser insights is active. So apparently for browser insight, it will inject the JavaScript beacon into the HTTP request for 10% of the total request. So it will not inject in all the requests. So that is why I am taking the screenshot of it, because this is when I managed to get browser insights activated in my demo site. So you can also try, because it requires a volume in order for you to get this to be activated. So you will see in the developer, you see RAM, RAM is the real user monitoring. And then inside there, you can see that that is a request URL goes to cloudflareinsights.com. So this is where one of the component of the browser insights. Another thing is beacon. So beacon is the JavaScript that Cloudflare injected when browser insights is activated. So again, it goes to the cloudflareinsights.com, whereby it will be reflected in your browser insights. So this is how you can see, but eventually you do not need to set anything in your website because browser insights will work as it is. So again, if there is not enough requests coming to your website, then of course you will not be able to see anything actually in your analytics. So this one seems like, yeah, I do have some requests going to myapp.cloudflare.cf and blog.cloudflare.cf. So yeah, this is how you see browser insights when it works. In terms of the configuration, this is the configuration that I create. Actually, it's one very simple, measure everything, because I want to, it is a demo website, so nothing much. Traffic insights. So with that, I just want to conclude for today's session. So you can take a look. So this is how browser insights looks like if you have load in your website. If your customer is interested to try out browser insight, you can simply enable that. It will not affect anything in terms of the performance. With regards to performance, so these are some useful resources for you to read related to the page rule, how our solution caching works, as well as how our CDN works. With that, I would like to close with a summary of what we have learned over today. So we learned for the performance advanced caching mechanism, how you use page rules to customize the caching behavior, cache configuration and tuning, to understand cache analytics dashboard, the general performance tuning and troubleshooting. So what are the questions you need to ask your customer if they have issues with the performance. Argo Smart Routing, tips caching, and last but not least is browser insight. So with this, I will close the session for ASA. Tomorrow we will be gathering again for the exam. So I would recommend you before the exam, make sure you have access the partner portal and you make sure you can see both ASA performance, ASA security, and then there is something in the chat. Let me take a look. Oh, okay. Thank you, Camila, for sharing this. So the same thing will be shared in the PDF as well. And then if you have 1 minute, please help to fill in the form. So we have good input from yesterday in terms of the content as well as the, mostly it's about the content. So that's all for today. Thank you for your time. I will still hang around here for 5 minutes if you have any questions. Otherwise, yes, let's meet up again tomorrow. Yeah, Camila?
Yeah. Just I sent you the also ping the 2 people that was in the chat who don't see ASA exam. So if you can help just to check what's going on, maybe with the enablement team. But yeah, thank you so much, everyone. I think you should be good to go. And tomorrow we see you for exam. Please try it before the exam today, that you're able to see, that you're able to access it. In case if you have any issues, just send us a mail. We will try to solve it before tomorrow time so that when you arrive, you have it all available for you and no technical issues.
Correct, yes, because that is what we experienced for last week.
Yeah. Thanks, everyone. Take care and bye-bye.